Welcome to Yes Users podcast. I'm Avinash Tripathi, your host. Today's guest is Ranjan Dhar, a tech visionary with over 30 years of experience in the IT industry. He has held influential roles at IBM, SAP, and Oracle, and is currently involved in strategic consulting. He's highly skilled at using advanced technologies such as AI, IoT, and cloud computing. His extensive network of CXO relationships demonstrates his significant impact on the industry. Get ready to explore the world of digital transformations and enterprise sales with insights from a true industry leader. So let's start. So Ranjan sir, welcome to Yes Users podcast. How are you feeling, sir?
Oh, excellent. Thank you for having me here, Avinash.
No, it's completely our pleasure. So, sir, you have been associated with a lot of tech companies, right? You have been associated with IBM, SAP, Oracle. So, what led you to become a consultant and strategist now?
Primarily, I felt that after 3 decades of doing a formal job, it made a lot of sense to consolidate that experience and then do a totally, I wouldn't say flexible, but a totally different role away from the general, day-to-day grind. And that was one. And the second is obviously felt that we could probably go back and give back some of those experience and share with the society. And the third is obviously being in technology companies, technology has been going up by leaps and bounds, changing its paradigm every 2 or 3 years. So keeping track and somehow getting marrying the experience of 3 decades to the technology that's coming and what is really required in a client-centric world is what led me to move from a regular job into a consultant and advisory role.
Right. That's very interesting point you made. So, tell us about technology evangelist, right? That's the term you use for yourself. What is the role of technology evangelist for a person who might hire you in future?
Okay, a technology evangelist has a couple of things which he needs to demonstrate. One, of course, is must be abreast of what's the upcoming technology, okay, what's going on today. And I won't say the geek world, but the overall technology world. When you say geek world, it's more IT centric. But technology today is not IT, is not only IT centric, right? It pervades across various verticals. So you need to be abreast of not only being a single vertical centric, but being able to know what's going on in the various domains. I mean, there could be technology for ESG emissions, net carbon zero. There could be technology for heat dissipation, for EVs, connected cars. So there's a whole lot of realms. So you need to have a broad idea. You need to be able to demonstrate where that technology would be used, which means use cases. Okay, why would somebody, look at a technology? One would be obviously to gather knowledge, but the other more important thing is if he's spending time with you on listening about a technology, it needs to be relevant to his line of business. How's he going to, derive benefit by using that technology? That's number two. And number three is you got to be skilled enough. As a technology evangelist, you need to be constantly upskilling and be in line with and be abreast with what's in the marketplace. So those are three, I wouldn't say characteristics, but the three very important pillars of being a technology evangelist.
Well said, sir. Well said. So, because a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, and, one of the common problems that I hear is that, everybody want to get into the business of IT consultancy because, there's a lot of money in it and, it's relatively easier as well. But the challenge comes in like convincing your prospective clients, right? That, why should they trust you over hundred of other IT service provider? So what will be your advice to those people?
Okay, the first thing when you are embarking on a startup journey or an entrepreneurial journey, you got to be sure about what's the business ecosystem that you're getting into. Okay. If you're sure about that, then you would have dug deeper into who your client personas are and what are their requirements. Okay. And number three is, how do you instill that trust? The trust actually is built over a period of time. Okay. That's the 101 of trust. Okay. There's no rocket science to building trust, or there's no cookbook to building trust. There are several things that you need to do to build trust. Okay. Which means honesty, call a spade, be able to articulate the pros and cons, be able to tell clearly what would be the benefits. Those are some of the things which would, move the needle towards building a trust. Okay. And obviously, all of that would finally lead to an experience which the customer would be delighted in. And if you can deliver customer delight, and then obviously you're one step closer towards building trust.
Well said, sir. And that's what I say to a lot of entrepreneurs who are from technology background, that they need to work on their soft skills and communication skills in order to sell their product. Because in initial days, if somebody else is selling the product other than the founders, I kind of look at it as a red flag for the business. One more thing that I get asked a lot is that I know everybody wants to sell to enterprise clients, right? As per a study, a decision maker in a typical enterprise gets 50 to 60 offers per day, right? So getting that first foot into the door is often very difficult, especially for people who have just started, right? And who were like working before, so they don't have a very broad network. So what would be your advice to those people? How should they get that first meeting?
A smart businessman, I wouldn't call a salesman, but a smart business person would always have something what I call as an elevator pitch. Now, if you know what's an elevator pitch is the time you have in an elevator, locked with that person while traveling from floor 0 to maybe level 10 or level 20 or whatever. So that would probably be about 10, 15 seconds. Okay. So essentially, in that 10, 15 seconds, can you make a compelling statement about your value proposition, which is relevant to his business? And that compelling statement might make him sit up and say, oh, okay, I need to know more. And therefore, I need to devote some time in my calendar and go and learn more about what this person is saying, or what's the value proposition that this person is bringing to my business. So an elevator pitch is actually step 0 to opening the door and getting your foot into the door. And once you get into your foot into the door, then you may have 15 or 20 minutes to expand on that elevator pitch. And in those 15, 20 minutes, you've made an impact. Then he would align his or her internal team, and say, okay, now let's do a deep dive. Okay. It's a very, very methodical process. It's not that you will do a knock and walk in through the door. The person may not. Even if the person knows you, you're a friend. Okay. The maximum you will get is a foot through the door and a cup of coffee. But after that, you need to demonstrate value proposition. So that's very important for business entrepreneurs. What's happening is that many of the entrepreneurs see themselves as product evangelists or tech geeks, and so, okay, I have an excellent product and technology, and that's going to get me through the door. Okay, maybe, but more often than not, may not. Okay, and that's what makes the differentiation. So essentially, you got to prepare a lot. You got to know what your client does. You got to know what's the ecosystem. You got to know what's the challenges, and then you will be able to, go through step 0. If you do the step 0 right, then that moves you to step 1, and then that moves you to step 2 and 3, and that's how sales progresses.
Well said, sir. What you shared reminds me of an incident. So, I was mentoring a startup entrepreneur. So, we used to have like 30-minute call every week. So, one odd week I called him and I said, like, how are things going with you? What is the productivity like? And the guy says, I have done nothing in this last week. I have spent almost a week on preparing the first pitch that I will show to you, preparing that one-liner for the business. I have wasted the whole week. And I shared with them, like, this is the most important thing for the business, right? Because in your mind, your product might be unique. But whenever you say to any customer or a client that you have an excellent product, trust me, 9 out of 10 times, they're not going to believe, not going to take your word for it, right?
Yep.
So spending 1 week creating that elevator pitch or that one liner for your business and the first presentation that you will be giving to your client, if they show interest, is less. I would say spend a couple of months on it, right? Because in businesses, you don't need to be busy. Business doesn't mean being busy. Business means being effective, right? So you have to prioritize your time in such a way. And this took me a lot of time myself to learn that, what you're saying to your customer, each and every word matters. And how you are expressing yourself a lot of times is as important as your product itself. So that's really interesting. So Ranjan sir, tell us about generative AI. Whole world is talking, was going gaga over this technology. So what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so you need to understand first, I'll knock off the word G and say, what is AI? Okay, so artificial intelligence is nothing but automating the cognitive aspect of human minds, right? How do we think? How do we perceive? Okay, what's the perception? And therefore, what's the reaction? Okay, it's a thought, perception, reaction. Okay, that's a 3-stage cycle. Simply, I mean, how do you and I react? I mean, you give me, I give you a thought, you receive it, think about it, perceive it, and then react, saying, okay, this is how it should be. Okay, so artificial intelligence is machine doing that aspect of it. Okay, and for a machine to do that, because they're not like human brains, they got to be taught stuff. Okay, now how are they going to learn that? They're going to learn that by what you feed into them, which are called models. Okay, so that they have the database to look into and say that, okay, in case I get this input, I look into my database and find what's the matching output and say, okay, this is probably the aspect about it. Now, generative AI is essentially, the world's going gaga about it, and obviously because it automates a lot of stuff. It helps you do not only things like text, video, cognitive stuff, and all of it brought about in a jiffy. Okay, you don't have to spend extraordinary amount of time. You essentially have the machine looking into those models or the database, something's called large learning models, LLMs, and say what is the most effective or the closest model which can mimic the scenario that's been given to me. So that's generative AI. Why is it important? Because there is a use case, or every business has a use case for generative AI. And why do you need it? If you don't need it, then your productivity would probably be lesser than what your competitor's productivity is. So essentially, you're doing things more efficiently, crunching more in a shorter time frame, and doing it right the first time. Okay, that's generative AI. Now, how's it different from the human brain? The human brain has this adaptive nature. For instance, depending on the stimulus, the human brain would react. Okay. Now, can you capture all the reactions to all the stimuli in a learning model? Probably not. So, obviously, there is a learning cycle that every model or every machine learning algorithm goes through. And therefore, generative AI has those LLMs, and therefore, processing those LLMs in the shortest possible time, for which you have those fast hyper processing GPUs and semiconductors which are coming up, which process and do the crunching of those models in the shortest possible time. So that's what generative AI is. Okay. And the underlying aspect of it is machine learning, which is learning of algorithms for predicting things, doing predictive analysis, and having deep learning algorithms, which are the large learning models. So that's generative AI. Why is it important? Because it has use cases in almost all verticals. Why do businesses need them? Because businesses need to be agile. They need to do more with less. And that's optimization that businesses are constantly moving towards and inventing. So that's why generative AI is where it is, and it is the buzzword today.
Well said, sir. One of the best explanation I have heard of late on the term AI and generative AI. You have vast and successful career. When you look back, what is one sales or marketing campaign you are most proud of?
Okay, so there have been many, but let me take one specific example. That's a campaign or a marketing campaign that we ran when we were launching the product or bringing the product way back 3 decades back into the country when IBM was still a joint venture with the Tatas. And there was this high-performing machine, a RISC Unix server that time, okay? And it used to be written RS/6000. So RS actually used to stand for RISC Unix server and 6000, okay? Now, the marketing campaign obviously had the bells and whistles and speeds and feeds, etc. But what was very, brought a smile to many people's face at that time was this was one particular client. And when that story was told, because the client lifted up the phone and said, "Maine aapka naya machine dekha. I've seen your new machine ads, ones which says RS6000, which sells for rupees 6,000. Okay, and can you can you tell me more about that?" It's like, the reason I'm saying this is that how a layman would perceive. It again brings me back into what we discussed. You know your product and you say RS6000. Oh, it's all about high-end computing and blah, 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 number crunching, speeds and feeds. How's the layman looking at it? He's saying IBM is selling a computer at 6,000 rupees. Okay. Now, that's the message which has gone out. So if you look at the campaign, was the campaign effective? Definitely, because it caught the layman's interest, attention. But did it communicate what you thought it would? Possibly not. Okay. So if you look at the creative aspect of the campaign, probably the branding of the machine, what was the message it was communicating in a new country, in a new territory where you landed up and come in first and were new to the market, was totally different. The reason I talked about this is because it gives you a perspective and teaches you that, okay, you may have a swell campaign which you think is going to take you places, but you may be surprised at what it's actually communicating, okay? And that's a good part about it, okay? And that teaches you a lot of things. So next time you launch this thing, you got to think out of the box. You got to not be like, okay, this is speeds, product specification. That's what I'm going to talk about. May not be. You may want to talk something else. Okay. And that's the genesis of all marketing campaigns. You've got to be creative. You got to think out of the box. You've got to see it from the lens on the other side, lens of the person from the other side. What's he thinking? What's somebody with an absolute layman knowledge going to think and perceive it? And that's very important if it's a mass market campaign.
Well said, sir. And this is what I wanted to ask next. Like, in your opinion, the job that you have been doing so far, and all the things that you shared in the story, how do you think things are going to change in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, in the next 5 to 10 years, we're the oldies, we're the baby boomers, right? Okay. You have the Gen Z,
right?
Who have a totally different mindset. They're the digital natives. They've grown up in the digital era, probably never seen a rotary dial phone or a gramophone record. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How's it going to change? There are some things, since they're the digital natives, they're going to want everything in the palm of the hand
Right.
and something which is as near to reality as you can expect a product to be. Okay.
Right.
So, for instance, what becomes very important? Simulation, augmented reality, virtual reality.
Right.
Okay. All of those become very, very important. Okay. Because it lets you feel and perceive a product or a solution in the manner it would be when it would be deployed without actually touching and feeling it. They're not interested in touching and feeling it. They're more interested in seeing it really as it would be in case the product was purchased. For instance, if it's a car, okay, if it's a car and it's a connected car, you would want to see all the features through the app-driven interface and then decide whether that's useful for them or not so useful for them. And if it's useful, then when they buy it, they would know without too much of a training on what to do and how to harness the power of that technology. So the learning curve would become shorter, okay, because you're learning all the way. If you're seeing the product or a simulation, it's like you've learned half the stuff. When thing comes, the learning curve reduces, okay? And you're obviously getting a feel virtually and digitally of what is required and what you're going to expect when you actually purchase or get the product at your home. So that's how things are going to change. So it's going to be more towards virtual. It's going to be more towards it's going to be more towards simulation. It's going to be more towards augmented reality. That's what's going to drive everything.
Very interesting, sir. So, one of the things I also wanted to ask you is how to motivate the sales team, right? Because this is something even I struggle with. Because, if you talk about sales, in the initial days, it's very fun because you haven't found that perfect script, what works, what doesn't work. It's really interesting in the initial days when you're figuring out the perfect pitch. But once you have finalized that, it kind of becomes really mundane for the sales team as well. So what is your tips and tricks, sales team leads or entrepreneurs to motivate their sales team?
Look, actually, if you look at the Gen Z and the millennials, there are two characteristics that they have. I talked about them being digital natives, digitally savvy. And the second is a very, very short attention span in which you got to make it or break it. Okay. Which is why you see even the average years that typically the youngsters spend in a business or in a company is roughly about 2 to 3 years. In our times, if you spent only 2 years, you would have virtually learned that. You're expected to spend at least 5 to 7 years in an organization. Today, 2 years is an acceptable thing. So how do you motivate a person in that shortest time window, okay, besides looking at, the other aspects of money, incentives, commissions, etc. Those are a given, okay? If you were not giving those, then they won't be there with you, right? But after giving those, what is it that they're looking at? What employees look at today are harnessing technology in the workplace for ease of collaboration, okay? A digital workplace, a workplace where you don't have to probably, run around the office to do a conversion from a Word doc to a PDF and send it out. You don't have to ask for those tools. Those are available in the cloud. You just take them, use them, and push out your document. So that flexibility and usage, okay? So workplace automation is number one. Number two is ease of collaboration. How do you have tools which enhance face-to-face collaboration, or like what we're doing is a video collaboration, okay? Number three is how do we create employee delight? So it's not that employees don't want to be productive. Today, they want to be productive. They want to learn. They want to be fast learners. They want to deliver things fast and then move on to the next project. they want to be productive. Are you giving them enough productivity tools and technology for them to carry out their work at the fast pace that they expect, that they want to? Okay, because they always want to do more with less. Many of them multitask. Okay, so are you going to allow that? More importantly, are you going to be flexible in the workplace? Post-COVID, there is this huge workplace phenomena of hybrid working. Okay, it doesn't matter where I work from anywhere. As long as I'm delivering, you as an organization and you as my manager should not really have bother if I'm being productive enough, if I'm taking care of my clients, if I'm able to deliver, if I'm in the delivery back office effectively, efficiently, and all the time. Okay. It doesn't matter whether you're at place A or place B or place C. It really doesn't matter. Okay. So to sum it up, how do you motivate a salesperson? Obviously, the baseline is what's the job, what's the role, what kind of incentives are you giving, what kind of commissions are you giving, etc. Those are one factor. But the second most important factor is the impact that you as an organization is making towards that employee, so that the employee sees the organization effectively playing a part as a partner in the career enhancement, okay, and making it easier for him or her to work and deliver. If you're not cutting through the red tape and the bureaucracy, etc., making it easier to work, then there is dissatisfaction which could lead to the employee moving away. So it's often said, people don't leave the organization, people leave their managers, right? And that's more true than ever before. So you got to manage them well, you got to lead them well, you got to give them productivity tools, you got to be their partner in their career growth. And then, of course, the monetary part of it is a given. You've got to be competitive, you've got to be, have the commission space, etc., all of those. And essentially, you must have happy employees, because happy employees would deliver more for the company than having dissatisfied employees.
Well said, sir. Couldn't agree more. So, Ranjan, sir, are you ready for the rapid fire round that we play at the Yes Users podcast?
Yeah. Go ahead, shoot.
Yeah, the first question is, what's your favorite tech gadget?
Okay, I wouldn't say it's a gadget. I would actually look at various apps or applets. Okay, they could be super apps, which means one app having many multifunctions, or they could be apps which do things like M2M, machine-to-machine connectivity. Example is connected cars. Okay, I know where my car is, whether the door is locked. In case I've forgotten to lock the door, I can automatically lock the door. In case there is a problem, the car, I'm able to connect to and get support. So rather than having a tech gadget, I keep looking out for those kind of apps and applets, which are actually enablers and run on top of a tech gadget. In my mind, a gadget today is nothing if the overlaying app or the software is not there.
Yeah.
That's the brain.
Couldn't agree more, sir. So the next question is, one word to describe your leadership style.
Lead by example. In challenging situations, lead from the front.
Absolutely, sir. Next question, most impactful book you have ever read.
Okay, there's this book called Outlive. It's by Dr. Peter Atria. Okay, and it's the science and art of longevity. The underlying theme is live longer, live better. Actually, Dr. Peter Atria is from the medical fraternity and has written this book. Okay, and if you see the opening pages, it talks about a person running on the street, which is actually dirty. Okay, talks about the streets of Baltimore, which is actually in US quite dirty. Okay, and running around, and somebody from the top is throwing eggs. And he's running around trying to catch them so that they don't fall down and break. And after some time, he finally realizes that he's never going to be able to, stop the eggs from breaking. And then the realization comes that rather than running around trying to catch the falling eggs, you need to go up to the source and catch the person who's throwing those eggs. Okay. Related to living better, for instance, today cancer is one of the most prominent diseases, and India actually has one of the highest cancer rates because of our lifestyle. And if you really look at it, what they say is that you're actually with the cancer to the falling eggs. You're actually doing chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and all of those. Once you've discovered you're in a particular stage of cancer, you're not trying to go back and explore the source of cancer, okay? Which is actually healthier lifestyle. What are you eating? What's your, general lifestyle like? Leading a life full of mental stress, okay? All of those are reasons which lead you to developing the disease, okay? So, Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia is a tome, okay? But it's very interesting. It talks about how the evolution of medicine has happened and how we need to actually go to the root cause rather than try and address a disease when it has presented itself. And that's where AI and generative AI in healthcare is going to play a leading role over the next few years, when they would probably be able to discover or suggest, by the virtue of those LLMs, a possible patient having a high preponderance of discovering a life-threatening disease. Okay, that's going to be the most important discovery or use case of AI into mankind. I mean, people talk about AI taking away jobs, etc., etc., etc. But if you could harness, and the way it's going, probably you would be able to harness. But there are other stuff as well. There's a huge debate on ethical and unethical uses of AI and digital hacking happening, etc., and all those stuff. But then that's the reason why I would recommend this book, Outlive. It's Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia, and try and read it. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting.
Thanks a lot for that, sir. My next question is, who is your most admired business leader?
Okay, it's being in India, I would take an Indian name. Okay, many business leaders, globally, and we all admire all of them. Obviously, the top 10 global firms have Indian leaderships, and I mean, it's the Indian dominance out there, where you see CEOs and leaders of top companies being held by Indians. That's, where India is. But if I were to take a name, I believe the start of India's digital economy and digital revolution started about 25, 30 years back. And it started with the formation of NIC, which is Government Informatics Center, which is still hotbed of all government digital projects. And the pioneer for that was Dr. N. Seshagiri, late Dr. N. Seshagiri. If you look at it, the vision of Dr. Seshagiri on how to create a center of information technology of national importance, okay, and lay the roadmap for it to where it is today, is something which is quite interesting, and which is why, I have great regards for that man having conceptualized, envisioned all of it, and laid the bedrock for NIC.
Wow, sir. Quite an extraordinary example. For my last question is, what is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
Oh, the many, okay. But if you really look at it, the most important piece of advice that I've received is, don't be afraid of your failures, because failures make you drop. And unless you drop, you won't know how to stand up again, right? So if you were successful all along, you would never know how to address a situation and recover from a situation when you were down in the dumps, right? And failures are what make you learn and get up stronger, enlightened, so that the next time a situation comes, you would know how to handle it. So don't be afraid of failures. Chase your successes. But then successes is not about being successful. There are immense stories in the Bay Area where all the big logos started out of failures and college dropouts in garages, which are today the bellwether of NYSE.
Yeah.
Right? And were they failures? Definitely not. Would their teachers tell them in school they were failures? Yeah, by virtue of the mark sheet.
Yeah.
But did they become successful? Did they create the companies which have a market cap of $1 trillion today, a billion, multi-billion dollar market caps, and have gone places? They're the ones who started those companies out of garages. Okay. So they were not afraid of that piece of mark sheet, which gave them an A plus or a B minus or a D minus. Okay.
Yeah.
They learned to take it in their stride and say, okay, this is not the end. So failures make you learn. And failures are the keys to being successful. That's what I think.
Well said, sir. So, Ranjan sir, thanks a lot for coming on Yes Users podcast and sharing your thoughts, your experiences, and insights.
Thank you so much, Avinash. It was a pleasure talking to you. And thank you for having me on today's podcast.
It was our pleasure, sir. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Yes Users podcast. We had the pleasure of hearing from Ranjan sir's thoughts on navigating the complexities of enterprise sales to pioneering new technology initiatives. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. Also, share this podcast within your network. We will really appreciate that. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories and expert advice. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of innovation and success. Thanks for listening.